So I worked at Penny Lane Records in from about 98 to 2000, and it was kind of a harrowing experience because for a few reasons. One is that um in a sense I really I don't think there's been any good record store movies really, like High Fidelity and Empire Records and things like that. I don't really care for. I think they get certain things about the working at the record store correct, and then there's other things that they get um, wrong. One thing that Empire Records got right though was, at least at that time when I was at Penny Lane, was there was really kind of this sort of diversification of the different employees as far as what genres they were into. And so there was like I had thought of myself as somebody that liked all kinds of music and stuff, and you had to do like a test to get hired, and you had to like show a certain proficiency with rock, classic rock, jazz, things like that. And I did okay, but when I was there, I guess I was kind of like the heavy metal guy. And there was one other guy who was a heavy metal guy. His name was Dusty. And he was an interesting guy. But I'll have to talk about Dusty another time. Um, Maybe I should talk about Dusty now. No, you know what? I'll talk about Dusty another time. But I'll put that out there. But he was the other heavy metal guy. So I guess I was like the heavy metal slash industrial guy. And the the other people there, um, they were all into, and even though I seemingly knew a lot at that time about music, or I thought I did, thank you to Columbia House or whatever, but I didn't. And there was other people there that knew a lot more, and they were in their sort of genres. Like there was this girl who was into Britpop, that was like her thing, and there was a few guys that were like into indie rock and stuff, and and I was the only. I wasn't into like black metal and stuff back then because that stuff wasn't really available. It was actually, like, I think in like the 3 years I worked there, I never saw a black metal CD come through, um, used or whatever. It wasn't really available. It was like I think you read about it in magazines sometimes, but it was really obscure. Um, which I guess is how it's intended to be. But anyway, so being the heavy metal guy, I was sort of like, I guess, bullied by some of the other people that worked there to various extents, and because of that, I I got more insular in the type of music that I was listening to. So I like if they were listening to like Modest Mouse and Built to Spill and the Palace Brothers and things like that, and I just had a real sort of resistance to it because I was associating it with these people that had such a kind of a snobbish vibe. And when I got out of working there, um, and I got away from the music industry, right? Because that is part of the music industry. When I got out of the music industry, um, I I was I got a lot. I started to develop a much healthier relationship with music again, and I started checking out a lot of the stuff that I had closed myself off from listening to. Like they were literally the people that, like, if you put on like a Soundgarden CD or something, they would just like roll their eyes at you. A lot of them, not all of them, but it was like that kind of vibe. So, but when I got out of there, and I started working like a at Rite Aid, just like a normal sort of job, and I was just reading music magazines, like English music magazines and things like that, I started to go through and start reevaluating a lot of the stuff I had not dismissed. Dismissed some of it, but some of it I had just eschewed or avoided. And I ended up liking a lot of that stuff. So, and then stuff also that those people kind of didn't know about, but I had seen there, like Whiskey Town CDs used to come through, and I didn't pay any attention. None of those guys did either. But those Whiskey Town albums, and I could maybe do a video about Whiskey Town. Those Whiskey Town albums were really great, and and the, like Red House Painters, like people weren't really into like the Red House Painters, but I saw those CDs come through, and it's like it's so weird. You have all this music in the store, you could listen to everything, but because of like sort of the cabin fever of working there, you just get really exclusive to these certain things. And in my day-to-day life, I mean, I do get into ruts where like the last few days I think I was just listening to like a bunch of like Rolling Stones and Neil Young. But that's also because I was like 6, so it's like comfort music. But anyways, so when I got out, I had, and I don't know if it was this one, but this magazine was around, but there was an issue of this magazine that, and this is like around 2001, yeah, that had a review. There was reviews in there, but there was reviews for two albums. There was a review for this album. That was my mom sneezing. There was a review for this album by the Chamber Strings, and there was also a review for this album. And then Amoeba had kind of opened around that time, and I was at Amoeba not long after reading that, and I saw this used and this used. I don't know if it was these exact copies. It might have been. So I bought both of them. And this this album, or this, especially this band, went on to be one of my favorite bands of all time. Really. This band, the Chamber Strings, the main guy was this guy Kevin Jr., and he was from Ohio, and he played in, well, he was doing a thing where he's from Ohio, and then I think what happened was he moved to Chicago. He also played with this guy Nicky Sutton, who I tried to check out, but I wasn't very impressed with. So I think they got to Chicago, and they're kind of based out of Chicago. And his deal was, one of the things he'd done, which was notable, is he played in a backing band for Gigi Allen, but nobody really seems to talk about that very much. And I didn't get into Gigi Allen until like 6, 7 years ago, really. And I got into Gigi Allen more for like ideological reasons, like not not so much the the insane antics, but like more of his idea of like, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do artistically, and then I'm going to like die. Like that's the mission. That's something I thought was really great about Gigi Allen. Anyway, so Kevin Jr. backed up Gigi Allen. And then he was also playing in a band, I think it was called the Rose Hips. And that was kind of like him doing where's the Mystery Girls and then the Rose Hips. Mystery Girls was very Johnny Thunders, um, New York Dolls. Rose Hips, I'm not sure exactly. And by the time he got to the Chamber Strings, his songwriting had really evolved. And I have a friend of mine, Daniela. She lives in Argentina, and she was doing a online music magazine, and she got me to interview certain people, and she set up an interview for me to do with Kevin Jr. He was, I think, overseas at the time, so we had to do it via email. But I did interviews for LA Record and New Noise magazine and some other things. Some I didn't do a lot, but I've done some music like interviews and stuff. And I usually did them on the over the phone, and I like that I would do it on put it on speakerphone, record it on GarageBand, and then transcribe it later, and kind of editing as I transcribed it. And I like the way that those conversations read. Um, I didn't get to do that with Kevin, unfortunately, and then Kevin ended up passing away because he'd had some pretty serious drug issues. But I remember in the interview, and you can find it. Um, I remember in the interview talking to him about his evolution as a musician and as a songwriter. And he was saying, like, yeah, you basically you start out kind of like doing like punk rock or whatever. And he's like, and then you kind of figure out how to do some Rolling Stones type songs. And you figure out that level of playing and that level of like songcraft. And he's like, and then you keep at it, you start figuring out things that like Burt Bacharach and Hal David did. Because I think what happened was is he did this album, which is technically my favorite chamber strings album, and it's called Gospel Morning. I don't know why. I was talking to Grant from Grant's Rock Warehouse about this band, and this album, you can see that he's started to evolve from out of the sort of, it's not really, there's not really any punk stuff on here anymore. It's definitely Stones getting into what you'd consider like orchestral pop. It's like indie rock, but there's like an orchestral aspect to it. And there's some aspects of like country. The song Telegram is kind of like a country sort of tune. It's got like that sort of swing to it. Every Day is Christmas. Um, I Can't Lose. And then there's a song on here that's very Zeppelin-esque. It's called Cold Cold Meltdown. And this is like, I think, just an outstanding and one of my favorite of all time indie rock records. If you want to just say rock and roll, there's like orchestral aspects to it. And then the album he got to do afterwards was the one that was reviewed in that magazine. It was given a favorable review, and it was a big album at the time, though it hasn't really retained that, was A Month of Sundays. And I got this first, and I think later I picked this up used because I was so impressed. So this album is more orchestral. There's strings, there's keys, there's really lush backing vocals. The music is really lush. I remember Grant when Grant went out and bought this because I told him to. It's on an interview. He ordered it while we were talking, but he was like, it looks like a new wave album, but it's not really a new wave album. It's like this genre of indie rock. You could say the Pernice brothers fall into this category, and Josh Rouse falls into this category a bit. And just a it's really the highest degree of songwriting that you find in rock, where there's a complicated, now you don't always need like complex chords or complex chord progressions to make really great sophisticated indie rock or whatever. But sometimes if the song calls for it and you do it, then yeah, you've done something sophisticated. But there's certain things that you kind of do where you sort of like maybe hint at the chorus. Another album that came out a little bit later that I think had really sophisticated songwriting was that band the Meadowlands, or the band the Wrens, with their album The Meadowlands. But there was just this high watermark. You got it with Elliott Smith. Jeff Buckley kind of indulged in it at times. He got a little more on the bombastic side. There isn't anything really bombastic on these records. But I just basically Yeah, and I was really glad that I got to have the brief email interview that I did with Kevin before he passed. And he like I said, he had a lot of drug problems that resulted in the band kind of falling into obscurity after this. And there's a YouTube documentary, a 6-part documentary about the band's rise and fall that you can watch. But this period of, of music, this late 90s into the aughts, I'd say it starts in the mid 90s and it goes into maybe the tens. It was really the high watermark of of songcraft and performance, and it's just it was just really the best stuff because like yeah, if you really think about it, like um the Red House Painters stuff at that time, Whiskey Town's Pneumonia. I think that evidences a lot of really great songwriting. So a lot of that stuff I have tons of it. Not on CD, not so much vinyl, I don't think. But it was just really the best stuff. And there's not a lot out of it. And I think at one point I went and bit the bullet and I got this, which is hard to find. It's Ruins, and it basically collects like chamber strings outtakes and some of the stuff from the Rose Hips and the Mystery Girls and just solo stuff, and you get to hear that evolution that I was talking about, from him going from like a kind of a punk rocker, Johnny Thunders emulator, into the great great songsmith that he became. So I think that these two albums, it's unfortunate that he didn't get to do more, but I think that these two albums, they really capture the greatness that was this band that has been largely forgotten. And they're hard to find because if you Google chamber strings, what do you think you get? You get a lot of like classical music. And classical music is good. This guy too, I always associate them because they were in the same magazine, and I got them at the same time, and they have a similar vibe. This has a more subdued vibe, and you could tell that, unlike with this, where he's drawing a lot on the Byrds, Backrack and David, other sorts of things like that. You could tell with this guy, Evan Johansen, he was drawing on Radiohead more. And this album, or Quiet and Still, this one you can really listen to all the way through. It's great. The songwriting is great. He's Norwegian. He also, on this album, he's a little bit more. Kevin was not really in the songs. He wasn't really talking about like his drug issues. He was doing heroin. You could kind of tell by like the whole Johnny Thunders vibe. I think he was kind of doing the same thing because he's he's referencing it a little bit more in this album. And you play this for people, and people would just be like, "This is great. It's just great." It's a little bit. It's a little moodier. It's a little bit more in the Radiohead, Tinder Sticks kind of vibe. A little bit of Elliott Smith. He covers "Dancing in the Moonlight" by Thin Lizzy. It's great, and it's when he's doing it, you really get the vibe that it's about dope. So I don't think this really did much for him. And then he started this band Magnet, which I've gotten used, and he's recycled the songs on some of these, and they're fun. They're good. I'm just grouping him in here because he doesn't get his due. Neither of these bands get their due, and they deserve their due. People should go out and buy these CDs used, and they should listen to it and they should talk about it. So I'm gonna get this one done in 20 minutes, and I'm gonna sign off by not telling you to listen to the Happy Casualties. I'm gonna tell you to like, subscribe, and go and listen to the Chamber Strings and Evan Johansen.